Okay.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Hang Up. It's Wednesday. It's around 7 o'clock. My name is Matt Dillahunty. And between Christmas and New Year, typically I've not done shows. It's a downtime. People are generally visiting family, but I'm home and there are people out there who might want to be, having some fun. So instead of taking the year off, or the week off, I'm not. So not only do we do a 6-hour podcast here on the line, on Christmas Day, we're doing it again on New Year's Godless Eve. And I did a debate last night. It was a bit of a train wreck, but we talked a bit after the debate was over, and we're looking forward to possibly doing it again after getting to know each other a little better so that somebody doesn't think I'm trying to trick them when I ask a yes or no question. I'm just trying to move things along so we can find out where we agree and disagree. There's a lot going on in the world as well. There's a Republican who got elected to Congress who lied about pretty much everything, including his heritage. And when caught, just literally, while Fox was grilling him and people were talking about whether or not they should recall him for lying, he just shrugged it off. It's like, oh, the Democrats lie too. Biden's been lying for 40 years. So clearly, instead of saying, I lied and I was wrong, he said, nah, I made a mistake. Everybody lies. So this guy can't be trusted and absolutely needs to be recalled. Lauren Boebert, the idiot from Colorado, wants to abolish ATF because she thinks it's unconstitutional for them to know who owns a gun. It's not, but it's no surprise that Lauren is wrong, as she frequently is and doesn't know anything. But I'm not hung up on any of those things. Today, I'm hung up on snakes, and I've been hung up on snakes since I was a kid. I don't know why. I just really, 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 really like snakes. In the early 90s, I wanted to breed them. I wanted to breed ball pythons. And I actually got the shirt that I'm wearing. This shirt's been around since the mid to late 90s, probably closer to 99 or whatever. But at the time that this shirt came out, these were literally your only options for ball pythons. You had the normal phase, you had the albinos, and then you had piebald. Those were the albino and piebald were basically the first two morphs that were available to the public. And that's what I was going to do. Unfortunately, I was young and I had roommates, and it was going to be cost prohibitive both for me to buy the snakes that I wanted to potentially breed. I didn't want to wait years. And one of the things that happens when you're breeding ball pythons and other reptiles like that, or you have a lot of them, even just a large collection, even if you're not breeding, is in order for it to be cost effective, you also have to become a breeder of rodents or some food source for them. And of course, as I didn't own a house and I had roommates, they don't want hundreds of rats in tubs on their back porch. Things can get smelly and other things. That's where I'm at now, believe it or not. There are hundreds of morphs available now for ball pythons, and it's amazing watching the combinations. Maybe later I'll pull up some of the most amazing combinations that you can find on Morph Market, etc. There are dominant mutations, incomplete dominance, codominance, recessives, and then there are allelic combinations that act like superforms of incomplete dominance. And in many other reptiles, we have polygenic combinations that represent or that present in the phenotype, or what you can actually see, in wildly unpredictable ways. Now, Arden, I'm happy to say, also shares this passion / obsession with me. And we have created Epic Loot Exotics. That is our new hobby / company. And I just realized I did not prep for this dang picture right here. Let me get an image set up here. There we go. Once I turn off this other thing, you'll be able to see the logo that we've come up with. Boom. There we go. That's us. That's Epic Loot Exotics. We've started this off as a hobby, but it's going to be turned into a proper business. We'll have links to all of our various social media, and you can follow us in many different places. And starting after the first of the year, there will be content available on YouTube and other places as well. But because she loves it, it all started with one little snake. We were sitting around. I've kept snakes for years. I didn't have any snakes at all in May of this past year. And Arden and I started watching more snake content. We started talking about my history with the snakes, and then she talked about how much she loved the snakes. And so I bought her one. I bought her Skeletor. We'll probably show Skeletor later. He's too young to actually breed. But then we started going to reptile expos. And while we'll post links to our stuff in a little bit. And by the way, you know, if you're interested and you want to follow us, the people who are following us or supporting on Patreon or whatever else, we haven't quite decided how everything's going to work, but you'll all get first looks, first dibs, and discounts on anything that we're producing. But this isn't an advertisement for this. This is just me talking about our passion and what I care most about. There we go. Sorry, I got messages, and I'm gonna get. We'll be bringing snakes up at different points here, but this is a hobby for us that's we're hoping to turn into an actual business. But tonight's not about the business part of it. We'll have the usual, you know, social media things. Currently, we have 26 snakes. I won't be able to show you all of them tonight because some of them are actually actively breeding, and we could talk about that too. We also have 3 bearded dragons, 1 ornate Uromastyx, some isopods that we use or are going to use for bioactive enclosures, hundreds and hundreds of rats. Literally, we had 40 rats born in the last 3 days, maybe more than that in the last 3 days. And we have 2 cats to watch over all of them. Matter of fact, here's one of my buddies. This is Cobb, one of our young adult, kind of small corn snakes. And while we weren't intending to breed corn snakes at all, we got our hands on some. And so there's a breeding pair that live downstairs in the living room. They're in a regular terrarium enclosure, but we're going to be redoing that as a bioactive enclosure. They're just friendly and relaxed and cool. And I've never had corn snakes before this. I'd had a lot of ball pythons, carpet pythons, children's pythons, spotted pythons, mostly pythons. But yeah, this was the first corn that we had. Hey, you want to bite me on the nose? Do you want to bite? Would you please bite me on the nose? Would you show off on the show here and bite me on the nose? I'm begging you, bite me on the nose. See, it's really hard to get them to bite. Everybody's like, oh, no. Our family's reactions and some of our friends' reactions are like, oh, well, we won't come stay at your house now that you got snakes, which is nice. So that if you have some family members that don't like snakes, keeping them means you don't have to worry about them coming over to visit. Unfortunately, though, we like the people who didn't want come over. And so in addition to keeping and breeding them, we're also going to be putting together content to teach people about it, but we want to put together something like school assemblies where we introduce kids to reptiles, both the native reptiles in their areas, like corn snakes and things like that, and exotic reptiles as well, so that they know. People have this notion that these are slimy. They're not slimy, they're not wet, they're not moist. They feel great, and different species of snakes have very different feels in the scales. As a matter of fact, I got to hold an African file snake at one of the recent expos, and it has just the weirdest feel to it at all. But so that's Colonel or Cobb, our corn snake. And we've been to I don't know how many reptile expos over the last couple of months, the last 5 months or so. And as it turns out, one of those reptile expos, we ran into Aron Ra. His family has caught the bug as well, and he's also been an avid fan of herpetology and snakes and stuff for years. And so tonight I'm bringing in my friend, co-conspirator, and fellow herpetology enthusiast who just released 2 videos on his channel on the evolutionary history of snakes. Please welcome Aron Ra, who I believe is that a gray-banded?
Yes. This is the Blair's morph of the Sanderson, Texas gray-banded king snake.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's a beautiful morph. And these are, we have a 2 or 3 species of colubrid that are very, very tame right out of the wild. If you were to catch one of these in the wild, you'd be able to just pick it up and use it and keep it as a pet, because they're very calm, very docile. They're not aggressive at all.
So welcome. Tell us how you're doing, and how did you? I mean, have you been? I know you've kept animals and exotic animals. You've had an axolotl for as long as I've known you. You've got Max, the double-yellowed Amazon that used to be mine. When did the snake stuff start?
Well, I used to keep snakes when I was younger. I always wild caught snakes because I was always dirt poor. But I mean, I kept a lot of gopher snakes because I lived in and around Arizona. I've had a few wild caught rat snakes and that sort of thing. And I had a Sonoran gopher snake that was in one of my videos a while back. We caught a Tomalipan rat snake in the park down the street from my house, and that had beautiful coloration. It was such a lovely looking snake. It was one of the prettiest snakes I'd ever seen in my life. I gave that one to my daughter. And then later she got a ball python, and you know how when your kids grow up and leave, they leave you their childhood pets. So I ended up with her ball python for a while. And so, I mean, I had, previous to that, I had an emu. I had an emu living in my backyard for 3 years, and I used to take him for walks in the park, which was great fun. No leash or anything, because it's just not possible to do that. I had squirrels. We raised squirrels in our house, and I built imagine a phone booth converted into a cage. So like 2 walls are made of carpet and 2 walls are made of screen, so the squirrels can run all around it. And then
that's nice.
we would let the squirrels out every day for a little bit. And that is a little bit like having monkeys loose in your house.
Yeah.
And one of the worst pet decisions that I ever had was I fell in love with a Salvador water monitor. And I don't recommend it. I mean, they are super impressive, but I did not have the wherewithal to handle such an immense reptile. Yeah. They have an extreme propensity for mayhem. It wasn't recognized yet. This was in the late 80s. It was not yet recognized that varanids were venomous, although that became immediately apparent to me when I was bitten and bled like water for 2 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't need a scientific study to tell me that that's a hemotoxin.
Yeah.
That was pretty obvious.
It's funny too, because so people will ask, what's your favorite snake? What's your favorite this? I tend to just say ball pythons because that's what I have the most of. That's what I've spent the most time with. It's the one I know the best. And there's a nice variety. But honestly, I think if you just said, what's the most beautiful snake you've ever seen? It's one that unfortunately we can't keep. And that's the San Francisco garter snake, because they're endangered. So you can't keep them. You can have the California garter snake, which is not endangered and looks very, very similar. The difference primarily being the San Francisco garter snake has a fairly solid red line along the side, whereas the California is more checkered red side. But I just love the way they look.
What I'm looking to get myself is that California red-sided garter snake. I mean, there's a variety of different more. So I think one of the videos that I just came out with, there was 3 videos in that series, by the way, because 2 of them were
3, sorry.
Yeah, 2 of them were pure science, and then the third one was counter apologetics arguments. Asking how, if you accept that the first serpent or the first snake was the serpent of the garden, and that there's no creation after that all snakes come from him, well, then how do you explain all of this evolution within snakes from that point on? We have these transitional species, we have vestigial features, we have, all of these things to indicate the evolution of snakes. Which corner if you believe that the serpent from the garden was the first snake and that all snakes descend from that.
Yeah, I hadn't watched that video yet, it's something that I never really spent any time thinking about, because when I was a Christian, I would have just assumed, there were lots of different serpents and that was one of them. But then you have to say, okay, so God cursed every serpent because of what one of them did. And so the only alternative is that all of them came from this, because they actually, they have legs. They're just, you don't get to see them and they're not being used. So it makes sense to me that people might think, they're all cursed that way. And yet you have some that give live birth, like the boas, and some that lay eggs, like the colubrids and pythons. They're amazing. I have tons and tons of these. What now? But our race to collect the most snakes and to breed them is fairly new. Was it just a sitting around like us? It was sitting around. We stumbled on snake content, and the next thing you know, our YouTube was just full of snake content, and we were like, yes, we want 1, we want 10, we want 20, we want 30.
It was very similar to that. My wife, when she moved in with me, we already had the ball python, and shortly thereafter I got a gopher snake for a while, and she was having problems with both of them, and that I'd expressed that for a while that I wanted a bull snake, which is a subspecies of gopher snake. It's just a bigger one because I wanted a larger snake. And she was not having it at first, but at some point she brought home. I had it in my hand, but I couldn't hold the king snake and the corn snake both at the same time. But I've got a ghost morph corn snake over here. I had to use the backup studio because whatever, I had some kind of power failure in my regular studio. So anyway, my wife comes home with this ghost morph corn snake. And so here's a woman that has always had a phobia of snakes her whole life. And then she just went up and bought one. And it's adorable, right? So she falls in love with this snake, and she says, and there's another one I want you to see. And by see, she means buy.
Yeah.
So she takes me to the store. We get a California King, which I should be holding right now. My wife was going to go get it for me, but she says the Cali King does not want to come out at the moment. The Cali King, this is the one it's like black and white banded.
Right.
Yeah. And then when we had those 2, she says, do you want a snake? And I would still like to have a bull snake. And so next thing you know, we've got a bull snake now. She went ahead and bought me one. And then there were more. And at some point she just decided that we're going to start. She got more and more interested. She just does nothing but research on snakes, which got her into the breeding videos. She watched like basically everything Clint's Reptiles published, all of that sort of thing.
Yes. It's Clint, it's Snake Discovery, it's Wicked's Wicked Reptiles. You guys are like us. Aron and I have been doing this for years. Arden, I think, was fairly new to it, but we're all obsessive learners. And so it's like, let me learn absolutely everything that I can about these. This, by the way, is Honeycomb. She's a ball python. She is a champagne inchie, and I won her in a raffle at one of the many events that we were at. She is only about just under 1,000 grams, so she's not quite ready to breed. but she was a surprise snake and one of the morphs that I had always wanted. Really sweet. One of my, if not my absolute favorites. I just think it's cool that we won her in a raffle, and she's got, such a great pattern. Identifying the patterns in ball pythons is a job in and of itself. Learning which, for example, champagne is part of the spider complex. And so you would not want to breed this to a snake that had the spider gene, because all of the offspring will die. It's a lethal combination for offspring, but you can breed her all you want as long as you don't breed to anything else in the spider complex. And so you can get really nice champagne, and champagne is about the coloring and the pattern morph a little bit. And then the pattern morph's extended because of the Inchi, which is a incomplete dominant that is a location based. It's named after a location where they first came from. But yeah, I will let you have her back. Thank you, sweetie. So we were
This is one of our extreme reverse Okati corn snakes. It's really hard to get the looks on this one, but as you can see, the coloration is rather like candy.
Yes.
So this is a breeding pair. These are very young, but they're a breeding pair, and we have we call these because they're candy colored and they're corn snakes. We call them our candy corns. Yeah, she doesn't get handled enough. I don't like handling the baby ones because they're too fast. They get away too easy. When they grow up, they chill out. Oh, there's something cool to see. I don't know if you can see it. Look at the mask. You probably can't see it. The mask on her head. No, it's not. That camera's not going to focus. I apologize. But she's got a death mask on her head that looks really groovy.
Well,
okay.
One of the interesting things that happened is that
yes.
Arden and I we went up to Dallas, the Dallas area, to go to a reptile convention, and we were sitting in the car and looked over, and yep, there's Arden and his family right there. And that's when this whole conversation started about, oh my gosh, you're into snakes, I'm into snakes. And one of the things, I think we only had I think it was less than 10 at that time.
I think for us too, we kept along at the same pace.
Yeah.
Until very recently. I should be at 26 snakes like you are, but we have to wait for the beginning of the new year.
Well, I'll be at 27 around the time that you get the next one that's coming in, but
you're gonna be in the lead, I think, indefinitely.
I don't know that we're gonna be. We probably won't be in the lead for long. You'll catch up and pass us, and then when we have all the babies, because one of the things that's different is that 21 of the 26 snakes, actually 23 of the 26 snakes that I've got are already breeding size and actively breeding. And so I could have 23 litters this summer.
We've had to be frugal. So I mean, and you can buy, when they're babies, they're cheaper.
Yeah.
So we've found some pretty good deals especially considering the types of and morphs that we have, because we do have some really pretty ones and we have some good
great
ones.
stuff.
We're still going to have to wait like a couple of years before they're old enough to breed, unfortunately.
Yeah. So that's the thing is, while we splurged a little on a couple so that we could produce dreamsicles, because that was our first goal. And so this is
our first one. So our ghost corn.
Nice.
So hard.
Now, corn snakes are also rat snakes, aren't they?
I think so.
I think they're both.
Or milk snakes. Oh, wait, I get confused sometimes because king snakes are milk snakes and corn snakes are rat snakes, and it's hard for me to discern.
Yeah,
especially since we have Asian rat snakes, and they're not even the same genera.
Right. And there's some, we'll be sitting around and watching and getting introduced to new content or new types of snakes, and all we'll do is be like, oh, this is what we need to do next. This is what we need to do next. But I have a breeding plan, and the breeding plan primarily consists of ball pythons, and we have two babies that are in the ball pythons that are still too young to actually breed. And so for those who are going to ask the questions, and we'll take calls here in a little bit about the snakes and other things, but generally speaking, for ball pythons, the males need to get to be. Which one's this?
This is one of our blood red pied sides.
It's so cool looking.
Yeah, I wish I could get it up on. I wish these things would know where to pose.
You got to train them. And speaking of training, we've been watching content on actually training snakes and watching someone who's incredibly good at it, operant conditioning, and watch her basically target train her snakes to follow her around, to know when they're going to eat and everything else. They're much smarter and much more inquisitive, most of them, than most people would know or think about.
Okay, this is the mate. This is the mate for the one I'm holding here. All right. Oh, can I hold you with just... There we go. There we go.
Oh, that's so red.
Yeah, the other one's in shed. Tell him.
Yeah, this one's in shed, which is why the coloration is so much darker. And
that is so pretty.
This is what this one should look like. So this
is so
the
pretty.
Breeding pair we've had that are actually adult and ready.
This was the first one that I got for Arden, and it's we named him Skeletor, in part because there are little bones on his back pattern, and because he has a head stamp, which you're not going to be able to see. It's going to get washed out with the camera. That looks kind of like a skull. He is, and I'm always going to get this wrong, a yellow belly spot nose, a banana yellow belly spot nose lesser flyer. Woot! I got them all. That's all 5 genes for him. He's a boy, and right now I think he weighs about 350 grams or so. We need to weigh him next week so we get updated weights. But he won't be breedable until he's about a year old at least, and around 900 grams or so for males. This was the second one. Wow, you really got a grip on my hand. This was the second one that we got. And this is also a ball python. This is Chandra. And she is a super orange dream Inchi. And she's only about 250 grams, but it'll be at least 2 more years, if not more like 2.5, before she's breeding ready, because females really should be at 1,500 grams before you breed them, although I've heard of people breeding them slightly earlier than that. But we don't want her to get egg bound or have problems. And on camera, she looks yellow, probably closer to pastel on this camera, at least on my preview. In person, she's orange, and is a pretty deep, super orange dream. And so,
I want to ask,
why name them? Do they come when they call?
You've been doing more professional herpetology, or been more into herpetology than I've been able to be in the last 20 years or so. So I'm envious at the edge that you have on me. But when we were kids, you were telling me yesterday that many of the morphs that we're talking about today didn't even exist.
Correct. The shirt that I'm wearing, I've had since the late 90s. These were the only options you had for ball pythons until around 1999. And that was normal, albino, and piebald. Albino and piebald were the first 2 recessive morphs that were available. And when they first came out, I believe the albinos were selling for about $15,000 and the piebalds are selling for about $15,000. Now, some of the new morphs are selling for that now. I mean, if you go to Canova, some of the more, like if you wanted a Pompeii, which is like a 6 gene double recessive, I think, you could pay $12,000 to $15,000 for that easy. And if you get involved in a dinker project, proving out a potential new morph, that could set you back a ton. But yeah, early on, there weren't many ball python options. And as soon as I saw albino and piebald, that was it. I was like, I'm getting into snake breeding. And unfortunately, I didn't have any money to do that. And I was still in the military when I first got the bug. And so it just didn't make sense.
So my daughter, as I said, she got a ball python, a normal ball python, many years ago when she was a teenager. And she asked me recently, couple months ago. When we started getting these snakes, she said, "Well, if you want, you can get me a snake, but I'd like another ball python, but I'd like a different morph than the normal. I want a specialty morph." And so I found one for her, and I sent her a picture of it. "How about this one?" She goes, "Oh, that's lovely." I gave her this ball python, and I can't remember what morph it was that I gave her, but within weeks, she went out and bought 8 more.
Oh my gosh!
She went to a reptile convention with me and bought 8 snakes, and one of those ball pythons was worth $1,400. So yeah, we've been going at the cheap end for the things that we get. We got a good deal on this one. Let me show you this one. This little bitty baby will look different when she grows up. This is a Russian rat snake. And when they get older, if I can get it in the right camera, when they get older, the dark areas will be blue-black, and the light areas, the bolts, will be high yellow. And this species of Russian rat snake is considered the golden retriever of pet snakes. The gray-banded rat snake or gray-banded king snake I was holding a little while ago that I said was completely tame, even if you found it in the wild. Likewise, these.
So can you play fetch?
Ready-made pets. They're brilliant. They're tame. You don't have to work with them a lot. They're not aggressive. They don't do the tail rattling and hissing and musking and all of that stuff that most of certainly American king snakes and that do.
So are they going to play fetch though? I mean, I can play fetch with a golden retriever. So I'm going to make sure we're going to take calls here in just a minute or so, and I have more snakes and other stuff to show. And we're just, by the way, for the people who've tuned in, who only want deep political conversations or religious content, that might happen. I haven't even looked to see what's on the line yet. And it'll definitely be the focus of many other nights. But consider this a holiday bonus show where I'm having fun with a friend, where we're showing off parts of our collection. I only have one snake that costs around or more than $1,400, and that's we have a pewter piebald breeding ready female, and pewter is pastel cinnamon. Unfortunately, I can't put her on camera. She's incredibly high white. I can't put her on camera because she's busy having sex right now to possibly make some babies for us. And this, by the way, we have not named. This is one of 3 bearded dragons that I'm just gonna say we rescued, because these were almost giveaways, and we had an enclosure ready for them already. I'd never had bearded dragons before, never had any interest at all in having bearded dragons. I really like the ornate Uromastyx that Arden has, but I've kind of got to where I really like these beardies, if for no other reason than they will just sit right here. And
yeah, interesting fact: the agamids that one of which you have on your shoulder, are venomous.
Really?
Technically.
Well, so are garter snakes. So are hognose snakes. A lot of the rear fang venomous snakes. You've got a false water cobra that's rear fang venomous, and probably the most venomous of all the snakes either of us have. And
yes,
still,
that's the only
it's not going to do much other than make your hand itch.
I want to mention something about. I would love to bring my false water cobra out here. He's just hands down. He's my favorite snake. As soon as I saw this thing, I fell in love with it immediately. Yep. And he really is just adorable. I can't bring him out because he's digesting today. He just ate, and we could not get him to eat. I bought him on November 9th, and we couldn't get him to eat for all of this time, and I couldn't figure out why. He seems perfectly healthy. His enclosure's got the right temperature. It's the right humidity. It's the right size. I built this huge cabinet. I made a video about it, so I've got this big old cabinet space for him to stay in. And I called somebody who specialized in these kind of things. She had false water cobras, and she said that it might just be picky. It might want privacy. So she said that she had one that if it was eating and it saw you looking at it, would drop the mouse and not eat anymore.
Yep.
And so she said, you might just consider that. And I thought that's a strange kind of condition, but fine. I put a sheet over the enclosure, And there was a little space that I could look through, and I walked past just at the right moment. About 20 minutes later, just happened to be walking past as I saw the snake strike the mouse and eat.
Yep.
That was it. It wanted it wanted the privacy of not being able to be seen.
There's a lot of snakes are especially finicky eaters in captivity. Ball pythons are notorious for it. But also some of them will just go off food, and some of them go like once there's breeding. Well, we could kind of race there since I have one that looks almost exactly like that.
Yeah, but this is the rainbow boa.
Yep,
Brazilian rainbow boa.
Yeah, grab citrus real quick, hon.
Yeah, and this snake is just totally lovely. I mean, it's iridescent in the sunlight, and makes a fine pet. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, they're gorgeous. Ours has only been a little snappy one time, but getting back to the feeding thing, we sometimes ball pythons will go off food after the breeding, like after their prelay shed, they'll go off food for months while they're you need to pack them full of food ahead of time. Others are just finicky. We had one that we've had for 3 months that did not eat at all, offered it food weekly along with everybody else, and would not eat. And we tried rats, we tried ASFs, we tried mice before, and she just wouldn't take any of them. And just yesterday or the day before, she took a mouse for the first time. So here I am raising rats, and I got a snake that seems to only want to eat mice. So I've worked out a deal with the local pet shop because I have so many rats. We'll probably bring some rats up and show you later. I just oodles and gobs of rats. And so I'll just trade some of those off for mice. I have 4 full racks of breeders, and I just built a 20 tub, I just built a 20 tub maternity rack. So yeah, this is ours. It's a little smaller than yours, I think.
Yeah. Look at that lovely snake.
So yeah, this is our little baby. Is this a boy?
That's a girl.
This is a girl. Is yours a boy?
This is a girl.
Damn it. See, we could have worked out a swap and ended up with babies already. We should have talked. Well, we wouldn't have babies for a couple of years because these are babies.
By the way, I recommend that false water cobra. I know that's one of your dream snakes.
Oh, I'm getting one.
Yep.
I will have a false water cobra and a dry markin of some other variety. So I don't know if I want like a black indigo or, a yellowtail crebo or something like that, but one of those will be on my list.
My wife wants the Mexican red tail. I want the Texas, and my son-in-law wants the yellowtail with the blacktail crebo.
These are very similar, and they're both both Brazilian rainbow boas, and they both have kind of like the orangish phase as opposed to the darker red right now. But I love the little half moons along the bottom of them and the spots. These are more closely related to anacondas than they are to the other boas. And so this is like having a little gorgeous iridescent anaconda that will probably snap at you once or twice, but is mostly okay.
What I like about it is every time we go to these reptile conventions, somebody always hands me a retic that I think is just absolutely lovely. I mean, these baby retics are so damn beautiful. I realize that in a single year, it'll be too much for me to handle.
Yeah.
But this is every bit as pretty.
Yep.
And it'll never get bigger than me.
I have limits on what size. I've had retics before. I had one African rock python. I had a couple of different Burmese pythons, including an albino. I had carpet pythons. Right now, I want a Darwin's carpet python just because they stay smaller. I don't need anything that I'm going to end up having to turn over a room to. I don't need, big ass iguanas and monitors, and I don't need, 14-foot retics or longer. I'd rather have a bunch of really cool super dwarf retics are a possibility, Sonny Joe. Thanks for reminding me of that.
They're just crazy expensive.
Yeah, but dealing more with this stuff here. Let's take a call or two here since there's people waiting. I'm not even going to read it. Mary in Florida, you're on with Aron and Matt. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are y'all doing?
We're doing all right.
I'm not a big fan of snakes, but I love the show about them. I
got a bearded dragon
are
here.
yes, they're okay. Um, I I did see Aaron's video with his granddaughter holding a snake, which I thought was precious.
It's my favorite
Um,
photo.
yes. When I was teaching, we did a yearly field trip to a wildlife rescue center, and so my students got to see snakes and bearded dragons and turtles and insects and birds, rescued owls and things like that. So I kind of had to suppress my aversion to snakes so as not to influence them. But
Sure.
the joy on their faces when they would hold the snake and really be into it was, was fabulous.
Well, there's an
So
advantage to having that aversion that you were talking about. It keeps you out of the addiction.
Yes.
well, I just didn't want my hesitation to affect the kids' views, and so a lot of mostly the girls were more hesitant to hold the snakes, but because I was encouraging, they did. But anyway, I appreciate your snake collections. I think it's great. My brother growing up had a pet snake, and he would let it sleep with him in the bed. And of course, my mom was about to have a heart attack about that.
Yeah, I wouldn't have snakes sleeping with me in the bed for lots of reasons, not the least of which is that once I go to sleep, they can go off and do something else. Is that a pastel clown?
It is spot nose, and I don't remember all the morphs for you. My wife would have to come give the list. I had to write down the list. There's so many genes in this. What?
It's a spot nose clown,
Spot nose clown,
firefly,
firefly, yellow belly.
So it's pastel fire, yellow belly, spot nose clown. Nice.
Yes.
Wow, that's a long name. But also, Matt Hunt, I watched your debate about Mariology.
Yes.
And just a few questions on that, and then I'll let y'all go.
Sure.
What is the meaning of a perpetual virgin?
It means someone who's a virgin for their entire life or their entire existence.
Okay, but didn't Jesus' mom have other children?
That was something we argued about last night, where I was saying what the Protestant line is and what the fair reading, in my opinion, of that passage in Mark is with regard to Mary having other kids. He doesn't think that Mary had any other kids, even if Joseph did. And that's because he has to dogmatically stick to the notion that Mary was a perpetual virgin. So that's a serious point of disagreement among scholars, but it's only a disagreement in the sense that someone with the baggage of having to believe as a matter of dogma and doctrine that she was a perpetual virgin can't accept the plain reading of the text, whereas somebody who isn't bound by that can read that and say, oh, well, of course, like every other human being, she went on to have sex.
Look at the mask on this one's face.
Oh, yeah.
But so Joseph never impregnated Mary, apparently?
According to the Catholic doctrine and William, who I debated last night, yes, that's never happened. I don't believe that if they were in fact real, which is something else they can't demonstrate, but I didn't want to go down the mythology route last night. I don't think that's a realistic thing, and I don't think it's what the Bible says. So
where did James come from?
Which
That's
James?
My thought.
His brother? According to William, Joseph had kids. Possibly, they don't know who the mother was.
Okay.
I kid you not. It came up in a debate last night. But
yeah, I heard that. Was Mary ever prophesied in the Old Testament to give birth to the Savior?
No. But that's coming from an atheist who evaluated all this and rejected it because he understands what it would take for somebody to actually claim that there was a prophecy and for it to come through. The passage in Isaiah that talks about, behold, a virgin giving birth. They want to claim, Christians of all stripes, not just Catholics, not just the people who think, Mary had a virgin birth, even Protestants. I thought Mary was a virgin, that Jesus' birth was a virgin birth, and that Mary was prophesied in Isaiah. It's not true. The passage in Isaiah is talking to someone else about someone else. And it's only what happens when people try to make things fit prophecy is they look at the events that they want to claim were prophesied, and they dig back through the books to say, hey, is there a passage that, if I interpret it correctly, can make it look like this is happening? And the evidence for this, more than anything else, is that these prophecies are Jewish prophecies, and Judaism doesn't consider Jesus to be the Messiah. So it's only the people who've fallen away from Judaism and come up with their own interpretation and their own take on prophecy that think this was prophesied.
Okay. I was raised Southern Baptist, and
Me too.
And our neighborhood in the 60s was a bunch of kids, and a few of the families were Catholic. So my mom did not badmouth the Mary worshiping Catholics too much, because she didn't want me to, say something as a child to a friend. But I did go to some Catholic services with a friend sometimes, and one time I did go and get the wafer in my mouth.
Yeah.
And I thought my mom was going to have a heart attack because I did that.
A little cannibalism never hurt anybody.
It's only Jesus's body. Probably it's not even really it might not be a gross part. It could just be like a toenail or something.
But she was like, you can't do that, and I didn't fully understand, the different denominations and all that stuff. But let's see, I took some notes during the your debate, and I think so Mary stayed a virgin forever, apparently,
according to him.
Okay. So the birth
that was a very
canal
frustrating marriage for Joseph.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was the only virgin in the story, wasn't he?
The original cook.
So the birth canal is a one-way street, like Christopher Hitchens said.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I have.
Well, thanks so much, Mary. It's always good to hear from you.
And I want to see a snake named Lilith, please, because
that was
does the Jewish
that was the one I just brought out. The candy corn.
You named
the candy corn was Lilith.
Okay, yeah. So some doctrines say that it was a serpent that talked, and some say it was Lilith that talked to them. Am I correct on that?
It's all serpent. Lilith is Adam's wife in some apocryphal texts before Eve.
Not yet.
And she wanted equal rights, and we can't have that.
But before my wife takes this one back, I'll quickly introduce. This is my white snake, Coverdale.
Yes. and is that an ivory? And do you know which two morphs it is?
When all of
it's a blue-eyed Lucy.
Blue-eyed leucistic.
Sure, but blue-eyed Lucy. Oh, okay. So blue-eyed Lucy. But do you know if it's like butter or?
It's a butter Mojave.
Butter Mojave.
Butter Mojave. Sweet. We may end up with some blue-eyed Lucies at some point. Thanks so much, Mary.
Thank you. Love your show. Bye.
Bye-bye. All right. So yeah,
I bring out my false water cobra because he's amazing. He's 6.5 feet long, and for being the only venomous snake I have, he's also once you get him out of the cage, he's the easiest to hold. Yeah, that's gorgeous.
This is our biggest girl right here. This is Pebbles. She is a pastel inchy butter / lesser, because butter and lesser is the same morph. She ain't fat. She is muscular. She's got a grip on my neck right now, and she's been a little jumpy. She's got the biggest head of any of our ball pythons. Is a great eater. The snake that Aron just had out that was a blue-eyed Lucy is a combination of a couple different morphs, and there's about 6 or 7 different ways to make a blue-eyed Lucy, because there's several that when you combine them, you get basically a blue-eyed white snake. We have a couple of different snakes that we should be able to pair up to get blue-eyed Lucies. Don't worry, she's not strong enough to actually choke me out. But yes, this is this is my big girl.
The rainbow boa at full size will be able to. So you don't want to put a full-size rainbow boa around your neck.
Definitely don't want to do it with an anaconda or a berm or a retic. But yeah, this is Pebbles. All right, we got other callers here, and so wow, what's this? Rico in North Carolina, you're on with Aron and Matt. Well, you're on the line. Welcome to Hang Up.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here.
It says here you want to talk about a snake detection hypothesis. I'm not sure what that means.
Yeah, so what this hypothesis it was. Let's see. So it was proposed back in 2016, not 2016, 2006, my mistake. And essentially, it goes that as snakes begin to develop venom, they get larger and prey on primates a whole lot more. Primates, through an act of fear, adapted to have certain characteristics like having better vision in order to, detect or see snakes. It's kind of like an evolutionary arms race. But according to this hypothesis, it states that this is like the primary reason why, primates have developed as they did. Like some studies back in 2016, I believe, show that certain macaques or certain monkeys, whenever they would see certain snake scales, they react very negatively towards snakes. And I kind of want to see what Aron thinks about it. Like, does he accept this hypothesis, or does he think there's probably numerous other factors instead of this one that contributes to why primates evolved the way they did despite snakes?
Well, I don't think I heard the hypothesis in much detail that macaques react a certain way to patterns indicative of local snakes.
Yes, and the snakes are within their environment, in certain regions. Let's see, trying to remember the study correctly.
I wouldn't be able to speak intelligently about that. I'd have to read it in order to make a judgment on it. This, if I could introduce this really quick, this snake has no teeth. Matt, you mentioned that you held a file snake.
Yes.
Yes. So this has the same kind of thing with its scales. When it gets agitated, I saw it once and I realized I was never going to see it again because we just bought it. And I knew that it was going to calm down pretty quickly. But in its initial high nervousness of it, being purchased, it writhed up in the cup that we had, and so it's rubbing the rasp scales together so that it makes a strange sort of a hiss noise, which is really interesting. This is an African egg-eating snake, and so
I got
it has
African snakes coming that are different.
It swallows the eggshell and then has protrusions of its vertebrae that go into its esophagus. That actually the vertebrae protrudes into the esophagus and breaks the egg, which it can then vomit up the entire eggshell as a unit.
Well, Rico, to your point,
for years how they did it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to your point, Rico. While neither of us are going to be able to say for sure, whether or not a hypothesis about an evolutionary arms race is right. One of the interesting things that I want to make sure people get is that let's assume for a second that this proposed evolutionary arms race is correct and that the two species interacting are driving changes in each other. I just want to make sure people are clear, as we have to correct this quite frequently, that at no point is evolution coming up with a goal and modifying creatures to reach that goal. There's no intention behind it. What would actually happen is, to the extent that there's an evolutionary arms race, it's in competition. The ones that survive are the ones that better work towards a goal. And there may be a number of different solutions that could have taken place, not just better eyesight or better ability to see something, or tracking movement versus color, as things get patterns that hide more. And for example, an albino snake in the wild, not only is it a recessive trait, but it's not likely to live as long as things that are more camouflaged. This one that I've got right now, this is Pinch Me, our leopard pinstripe ball python girl, who's climbing up my head.
And this little gecko does not want to be chill.
Got a wiry little leopard.
Yep. And this is Ginger. And she normally is just very calm and sits in your hand. But right now, don't stage fright. Doesn't want to be on camera.
That's all right. So I hope that's as close to an answer to your question as we can probably get, Rico, because neither one of us have done any studying on that particular evolutionary arms race. It's not really our field, but that's the type of interesting stuff. It's like, okay, people want to say, oh, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Okay, which came first, your camouflage or my ability to detect your camouflage? And the truth is that they rose alongside each other. Neither were the result of any intentional act by either the animals or some governing evolutionist. It's just, hey, if I kill off all the ones that I can see, the ones I can't see are the ones that survive to pass those genes off to the rest. And those are the ones that are going to make my descendants have to have better eyesight or better, features for detecting it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Here's Pinch. There we go. All right. Thanks for calling, Rico. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Matt. You have a good evening, and you too, Aron. You guys have a good one.
Thank you.
Yep. Let's see. Here. This is going to take a minute. Aron, are you bringing a new snake in, or?
My wife, I think, is going to get one for me.
All right. We have a theist caller, and so I want to make sure that we're not incredibly distracted.
Take another call.
By snakes. So Evan, a theist from Washington, called in before even seeing the snake topic. And it's perfectly fine. We're happy to have you here. How you doing, Evan?
Hi. I didn't mean to type theist. I'm the same atheist that talked to you just the other day with Jimmy and Ben.
Oh, okay.
I apologize. That was a genuine mistake.
That's fine. I'm happy to talk about
all right
stuff. So go for it. What do you want to talk about?
Well, I know what the text says about choice and consequences and what have you, but I put that all in before on my TV had caught up to my phone being linked up to the system. Anyways,
it's fine. Talk about whatever you want. Seriously, ask whatever you like.
Oh. Okay, well, let's first, in spirit of the show, there's another interest. Seeing Aron is on, I have an interest in starting or getting set up a planetarium for tree frogs, which I imagine. Yeah, like a planetarium.
I don't think you want a planetarium. I think you might want a paludarium or a vivarium.
Okay.
You want a bioactive enclosure? A planetarium is a place where you go to look at, like stars and stuff.
Right. Oh, okay. Yeah. I'll get myself more versed on proper terms there. What I was trying to say is it's like a plant with maybe a mist and maybe a still water or a little waterfall.
Yeah, you're looking for a paludarium and possibly a bioactive enclosure. This, by the way, is a black African house snake, and he's one of the mini snakes that I got for free. He is a little iridescent, and his belly scales are white. We're looking for a girlfriend for him. For now, we're just playing with him.
He looks like a 9+ foot long version of basically a rat snake out in Missouri. some black snake
Yeah,
that I
They have
caught
a,
with my
that one.
hand, by the way.
I'm interested
a
in that
slightly
one, Matt,
more-
because that's a lamprey.
Yes. They have a slightly
Okay.
python appearance and mannerism. This is an African house snake. We also have a brown one, which we'll bring in a minute. But let's get to your questions about setting up a paludarium.
Yeah. So while in my mind I've been leaning towards tree frogs, I haven't, made up my mind. If I were to pick a snake, is there one that's under $200 that wouldn't be too outrageous to care for, that might look good too?
Corn snakes are the best starter snakes. I was at a reptile convention a few weeks ago in Austin, and they had a number of baby corn snakes for sale for like $15-$20.
Okay.
I would
how
also.
big do they get? I'm really worried about size.
The biggest a corn snake would ever, the biggest corn snake would be like 6 feet. They're typically around 4, or maybe only 3.
Okay.
Yeah. The one I had on earlier.
They come in lovely colors and lovely morphs as well, and they're usually pretty tame. They're so easy to work with. They're the easiest starter snake.
Okay.
These are a close second for me.
A close second
these African
for you, the black
house
one?
snakes are. What's that?
The black one there?
Yes, this one that I'm holding. This is an African house snake. They're a close second. I just love these. They're new. I'm new to them, but I would agree with Aron that corn snakes are a great starter snake. Much easier to deal with than like king snakes, bull snakes, things like that. They will get to be about 6 feet long at most. Probably not a lot bigger than a thumb around. They're handleable, and you can also just have them in there to look at and not engage with them in a handling sense. But with these, the African house snakes, they would be even smaller. They are considerably cheaper for just, these are probably, I would first of all caution you, I'm going to recommend that people always buy captive bred snakes if at all possible, unless you're breeding and are trying to increase diversity. It's gorgeous.
This is my bull snake.
That is a gorgeous bull snake. There's a couple reasons for going captive bred. Number one, you will have fewer problems. Wild caught snakes come with a host of different problems, including parasites. You're not sure if they're going to eat. You don't know anything about their origins, and they do not tend to live as long.
No, my uncle tried to keep a bull snake once. It stank so horrid. Oh my gosh. Anyways.
But yeah, you can get captive breds.
That just showed up on the TV. That is beautiful, Aron. That's a gorgeous snake.
Thank you so much.
You can get captive bred African house snakes for $50 too.
$50 for the black African.
You can. It may be different prices, but this thing here, it's nice and cheap, very friendly. It's easier to feed because it's going to eat, smaller rodents. But yeah,
right.
I recommend a corn snake or an African house snake as a pretty good starter snake. Corn snakes are going to be easier than this because this has slightly different heat and humidity requirements. Look into care sheets. A corn snake, you can keep in a terrarium in your house and not have to worry about temperature and humidity the same way you would for a ball python or the Brazilian rainbow boa. Our Brazilian is in an enclosure that's nearly 90% humidity, in at least in parts of it, and he's got a little hide box in the back with sphagnum moss. I would go with Aron's recommendation that corn snakes are one of the best starter snakes.
Okay.
And if you're looking to build
if
you're looking to get a bioactive enclosure like a paludarium, I recommend hitting the internet, watching some YouTube videos on bioactive enclosures and corn snakes, and especially Bio Dude, who has a shop in Houston and a YouTube channel. And he recently just redid some of his corn snake ones and put up videos about it. Show you everything you need to know. You'll be able to get isopods and all of that.
Yeah. I have watched a couple of those. I should have had the name down right, but I got a hearing condition, to be honest with you.
Sure.
So, but in any event, I got to introduce to, well, not physically introduced. I've never met Aron, but virtually introduced to him through his systematic classification of life. Awesome stuff. Anyways, I loved it. I showed it to a couple of them, to my kids even.
Well, thanks so much, Evan. And if you get an enclosure set up, send us a picture. Let us know how it goes.
Yeah, it'll be a little ways down the road, but I'm, just in the onsets of, deciding what I want and how to do it, etc. So
cool.
Yeah,
I appreciate you calling in.
Conventions. And you get
absolutely.
You get good prices on the herp conventions, and you also get the advantage of holding the snake without having to order it to ship it to you. You will usually pay less than what you pay in a pet store. I mean, we get everything at the herp conventions, and sometimes they'll make deals with you. Sometimes you can negotiate. And as I said, when I was there, the place was about to close, and they were practically giving away these corn snakes. Like I said, $15 was one of them, and it was lovely. If I wanted a snake just to say that I had more snakes than Matt, I could have walked out of there with a bunch of useless corn snakes.
Yeah. But so what he was saying, Evan, was herp, H-E-R-P. It's short for herpetology.
Herp.
Yeah. So you got herp conventions, reptile conventions. In Texas, I mean, we've been to 2 a month all through the summer and fall. The next one, there's some that are too far away for me to drive. I think the next one that we'll be going to, not that you're in Texas, end of January, there's a herps convention in Conroe, and then the NARBC in Arlington is February 10th through 12th, and we'll be at both of those.
February and January. All right.
Yeah.
Well, shoot. I won't go on. I'll keep it short because this isn't what it was about. But I was watching you, Matt, earlier talk. It was maybe a month or 2 years ago. I don't know. But anyway, the topic was about morality and choices. Whether going to hell is your choice or not, kind of a thing. Anyways, but whenever I encounter that, even when I was a believer, I won't go into the nitty gritties, right? It's my own business, but it was a chaotic, violent environment, and it got to fisticuffs sometimes. And I just couldn't ever wrap my mind around how anybody would think that you would need an outside source to tell you what's right and wrong. Like in those moments, I understood soundly on my own that what was happening wasn't right. And you know what I mean? Like,
I hear you. It didn't take a whole lot of thought to figure out that murder was wrong. There are more complicated moral questions, of course. Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, Evan, I appreciate the call, and call us back another time. We'll dig into those subjects some more.
All right. Bye-bye. Good rest of your show.
Thanks. So this, before I take another call, this is also an African house snake, a slightly different subspecies than the lamp that was out here as the black one. This one, we're pretty sure, is a Togo variety, because the Tanzanian one has a white stripe that runs the full length of its body. This one's white stripe does not do that. It starts to fade as you get closer. When you get down closer to the tail, that stripe is pretty much gone. And so we are pretty sure that this is a standard Togo variety African house snake. But if there are experts who want to correct that, I'm happy to know more about this one, because this was another snake that I was basically given for free. And we'll be looking, it's a boy. I'll be looking for a good girl to pair it with. He's really friendly. He just ate his first meal 2 days ago, and he loves tying a knot. When you're hanging on, he grips onto your finger and he does this S-curve knot on your finger. And it's just, I mean, he's just, I got 2 free snakes in a species, 2 species that are related that I'd never messed with before. And now all we want is to breed more of them. Arden and I are addicts. We're junkies when it comes to the snakes.
Yeah, it is addictive. I've got a friend who has 40 snakes, and a lot of them are venomous. I mean, real venomous. So
All
I don't
right.
think
Well,
I'm ever going to get. I don't think I'm ever going to get a viper or an elapid.
Yeah, I have no plans. I have no plans to ever have any dangerous venomous snakes. I will have my false water cobra, and of course hognose and other things like that. Hognose is probably 3rd or 4th on our list. 3rd on our list to really start breeding after balls.
Yeah, I could see a mangrove snake.
Oh, I'd love a mangrove. They're so pretty. And there's an inverted variety I saw the other day that's more yellow than black. But I might be confusing. No, that's an Asian rat snake. That's not the mangrove. Never mind.
Yeah, we're interested in some Asian rats too. I mean, my wife didn't want me to bring them out because they're so small. They're little bitty babies. But we have a couple of Mandarin rat snakes, super gorgeous, black and yellow, and they're mostly yellow. Are those the ones you're talking about?
I think so. I can't get the snake off my finger. There we go. Yeah, it's so fun.
She wants a Japanese. She wants a Japanese rat snake there's a certain one from a certain island, which is blue, and it is very pretty. And then I think
you might be talking about the rhino rat snake that we were looking at last night.
I don't think it's a rhino because it doesn't have that weird thing on its nose. It's just
okay.
a blue.
Well, if you want a blue snake,
yeah,
there's a rhino rat snake that is a brilliant blue that I'm going to have at some point. Blue, by the way, is one of the rarer colors, and therefore, if you get reptiles and stuff that are blue, they tend to be more costly for some of them. But
that herp convention that we went to, the last one in Austin, where you went the day before, we showed up the day later.
Yeah, Leander.
I went to one of the tables, and I didn't look at everything on the table to get a clue of what I was doing. I saw one that had an interesting pattern along its back, and so I picked it up and I said, "Oh, this is nice. What is this?" And they said it's a green mamba. And that's when I noticed that the snakes on either side of it were diamondback rattlesnake and a gaboon viper.
Yeah. Normally they'll have red tape around the enclosures for all the hot ones. We've got 4 more calls, and I'd like to get through them here. And so we're going to start with David, pronouns are he, him in Washington, who has a story about owning mice. Welcome, David.
Hello.
Welcome. Tell us your story. I'm doing well.
Oh yeah, I have 2. I have 2 mice. Their names are Nuzzles and Nips, named because of the things they do. Nuzzles is my little snuggle baby, and Nips is a little ornery squeaky who would just nip my fingers. But then when you hold her, she just looks at you like, "How dare you?" But I also wanted to say that I love your guys' noodles. They're so cute. I wanted to hold Aaron's snake that he was holding earlier, the big Chungus.
Yeah. Well, thank you. It had been suggested that since I hosted the Ramen podcast, that our snake breeding business should be called Ramen Noodles.
Yes.
Yes. Yes, I love your guys' snakes, but I also enjoy listening to your guys while I'm working on 3D stuff, and it's been very nice and cathartic to listen to atheist programs while I was doing that, and I enjoy your guys' stuff.
Thanks so much, David. We appreciate it. You have a happy New Year, and maybe tune in for the New Year show. Oh my goodness!
Yeah,
here before you go.
I'm gonna. Yeah.
Before you go, David, I will show you, since you called specifically about mice. These are rats, and as we breed snakes, it is much more cost effective for us to actually breed rats. So this one is probably a hairless Dumbo. You see how I can't even see if I'm showing it correctly. Let me get back. I've lost my mouse now. I lost my mouse while holding a rat. All right. So that's my cute little Dumbo hairless. And he's only a couple weeks old. And then here, let me grab this. This is a Rex, which is a curly haired rat. Hopefully we can see it. And he's also got the red eyes. Really, really cute and really soft. No, you're not going up there. And the last one to show, this is Arden's favorite, which we're calling Wolf. That's Poop. We're calling Wolf. And he's got red eyes and Rex fur and a gray wolf face. And I can't get him really looking. He is absolutely awesome. And we've set these aside. Oh, look, honey, Poop. Can I get a little paper towel to clean up? Here, I got a
whenever my mice do that, I call them my little gross because they're so cute, but they can't help but poop on you.
Yeah, they're like pocket puppies if you don't mind a pocket full of poop. But anyway, thanks so much for the call, David.
So cute. Thank you for showing me your marshmallows.
Yep, cheers. So we started around the time we had a dozen or so snakes. It was becoming clear that feeding them was going to be a cost, and I just knew right from the beginning I'm going to set up a breeding facility for rats in the garage, and we now have hundreds. As I was saying before, 23 proper 1-4 breeding tubs, although only 8 of them have colonies in it, and then a maternity rack of 20 or so. And this is a road that most reptile breeders are going to go down. And if you have something like bearded dragons like we do, we are also raising mealworms and red runner roaches. It's a lot of work. I get up in the morning, turn on the lights, check the temperatures. I check on all the snakes. If they're in breeding mode, I check to make sure, check to see who's locked and who's not. We spot clean every single day for any poop or sheds or any of that. I use an application called Husbandry Pro to track everything about my snakes. I know the temperatures in the enclosures. I know how much they weigh and all this other stuff. And then I go downstairs and I look at the rats and I see how many babies were born in the night, because it stands right now we're basically getting new babies every day at this point, and rotate through. And then once a week, we clean out all of those enclosures. And so Dave in Maryland, welcome to the show. You had a question for me about Susan.
Yes. And also a question for Aron about protocells.
Sure. Aron should be back in just a moment. I'll tackle the first one. Go ahead.
Cool. So you said you were going to set up like an interview maybe at some point with Susan Hack.
I'm hoping to. I do not know her. I've never met her, and I have not yet reached out to her. There's been a lot going on, and with us kind of building up the network and me leaving the other network, I would love, but I think with Dr. Hawk, it would be much better to sit down and do an interview format rather than just have her call in as a guest or to be on the show as a guest. I want to sit down, shoot an interview talking about found herentism, and really giving her a bigger platform to get her thoughts out on the subject.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. If you're going to do,
you said Hack, and I've always said Hawk. Do you know which one it is?
No, I've looked at a few YouTube videos of her a while back, but I don't remember. No.
I will definitely have to find out before I continue talking about her. But go ahead. You had a question for Aron as well.
Yeah. Aron, are you there? I can't see the stream.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. So have you heard of Martin Hanksick? He's a researcher that has done experiments with like mixing up chemicals and making so-called protocells.
I don't know the name. No, I've read an awful lot of origins of life studies, but that doesn't sound familiar.
So if you look on YouTube, he did like a 15-minute TED Talk, which I thought looked really awesome. basically he works with like just a few chemicals. I think like 8 at the most for one of them. He would just like mix oil and a few other chemicals in water and make these like what he calls protocells. I was just curious of your opinion on them.
Yeah, for all the complexity that we hear about the origin of life, there are some experiments that seem just unbelievably simple. It wasn't the guy that you're talking about, but there was somebody else whose name also began with an H, but escapes my mind at the moment. He was doing a series of studies that showed that these simple collection of chemicals that when you heat them, saturate them, and then dry them, back in the heating thing, so your irradiation, inundation, and dehydration in repeated cycles, then the chemical structure kept getting more and more complex. And then if you waited until it is sufficiently complex and then you add a phosphate to it, you got ribonucleotides, which just seemed like that's way too simple. And it doesn't require that much repetition to get to that point.
Yeah, I have no idea what you just said, but or what any of that means, but sounds cool. Yeah, I love snakes too, by the way.
Awesome. Thanks so much for calling in, Dave. I appreciate it. And
Thanks.
Keep an eye out. I look forward to reaching out to Dr. Hawk and seeing if we can get some sort of discussion going.
Awesome. Yeah, I can't wait for that.
Cheers. Have a good New Year. There we go. I have 2 more callers I'm definitely going to get to. So if you're on the line and if you're on the line, you'll be on the line very shortly. There's 2 quick things I wanted to mention with regard to herpetology stuff, because not only do we have the snakes, some of which have similar heating and humidity requirements. We have other snakes that have different heating and humidity requirements, but we have the bearded dragons. Arden also has an ornate uromastix. And as we worked through the UV requirements for all of those, first of all, if you're keeping reptiles at all, you definitely want a temp gun like this. They're like $20 on Amazon, and it's just a laser light shoot, and you can see that book on my shelf is 75 degrees. But it's great for checking temperatures in any enclosure, but you have to be careful. It's not always going to be accurate on reflective surfaces or on heat tape. The other thing is that most reptiles have some UVB requirement or can benefit from UVB. And while you can keep ball pythons for their entire lives without UVB and not suffer serious ill consequences, that's not true for other reptiles like bearded dragons and geckos and things like that, where you can get metabolic bone disease. Now, despite the fact that you could keep a ball python forever without UVB, we don't do that. We don't just leave them in the rack. We have playpens, we have heat bulbs, we give them time outside to gather it. It's way too expensive right now. I really want somebody to make a version of this device that is affordable for anybody and everybody who might get a bearded dragon or a uromastix. This is a UV index detector measure. You won't get any in here. I'll push the button, but there won't be any because I'm indoors and I have LED lights on me. And up until recently, it was fair to say UV doesn't come from LEDs. Doesn't matter what LED you get. Doesn't matter if it's full spectrum or whatever else. That's full visible spectrum. You're not going to get any UVB or UVA from an LED. Now, the color coding up at the top here is basically the Ferguson index. So something like geckos are down in the Ferguson 1 scale, which is going to be 1 and 2. The yellow area there, you can have ball pythons at like 2 to 3. The orange, closer to 7 or 8, is where you're going to want bearded dragons. And then above that, like 9 and 10, is where you're going to want a uromastix. Don't take my word for any of this. Go consult a care sheet. Watch the appropriate videos, everything else. But I wanted to point out something because we struggled, and we're going to do a lot of video content about this on the channel, about getting, if you use like a mercury bulb, getting the basking spot where the temperature is correct and the UVB is correct is very difficult for most species with a single light. And you might have to try some very expensive bulbs The solution we've gone with is to use an actual heat bulb that doesn't produce any UVB, and this, because miracle of miracles, UVB now is available in an LED. These are brand new. They came out about 6 months ago. They are incredibly expensive. One bulb, and this is a single bulb. It screws into a regular light fixture. It has 4 UVB LEDs, 1 UVA LED, and 8 LEDs that just produce 6,500 Kelvin light, so full spectrum light. These bulbs are about $125 a piece, but they will last for years. And I've already tested them with the meter. We'll be putting out a video showing all of that, because for the first time ever, we can now just put a 9-watt energy efficient UVB light in a 4x2x2 enclosure for our Euromastics. And by putting it at the right height, he will get all of his UVB requirements from this. And then we only need to worry about a non-UVB, a non-UVA heat lamp for his heat requirements. So any of you who hadn't yet heard about the new amazing UVA, UVB LEDs, sure, it's not a bulb, it's an emitter, but a bulb emits light. These are diodes that emit light, and then NUVB, but I got you, James. But yes, I just wanted to share that because I know that's something a lot of people struggle with, and things just got easier. All right, so these last couple. Go ahead.
I just want to mention all these different morphs of snakes you were talking about that didn't exist, 20, 30 years ago. All of these new expressions of these genes, they must have always been dormant in the ancestral genome, right? That God put them all there, and they're just waiting for it to be expressed in these new varieties, because they can't be from mutations, because that would be science.
Yeah, because mutations don't happen, and they never do anything good. Anyway, we have, my apologies, we have Matt in Philadelphia, pronouns are he, him. Welcome, Matt. You had a question about snaky snakes.
Yeah. So first I want to say I was so pumped and excited that you guys were doing the show, because I've been always obsessed with snakes since I was little. I was the weird kid who would pick up garter snakes and bring them inside, and my mom would freak out, and I'd be like, oh, but I want them as a pet. And then I also got a bunch of snake tattoos. But my question is, why in a lot of religions is snakes considered the evil thing? Something I noticed even growing up with my obsession with snake is my Southern Baptist parents would always say how demonic and satanic my liking towards snakes are and stuff like that.
Well, with Christianity, I think the answer is kind of obvious. Culturally, I don't know, Aron, what do you think? Why do snakes get such a bad rap culturally, irrespective of a religion?
Well, because people know that there are venomous snakes, and they automatically assume that every snake is venomous. When I bought my daughter a ball python, somebody somewhere on the way home saw me standing outside. We're charging up the EV, and I'm holding this ball python, and these people are freaking out that I was holding a snake, because they're just they're looking at a ball python and they think the ball python is venomous, and that stuns me, because I don't know, I've never been in that mindset. It's hard for me to grasp how someone could think that. Aren't all snakes venomous is the question.
Yeah, I think part of it is ignorance that Aron's pointing out, where they don't necessarily know the difference between venomous snakes and non-venomous snakes. There were family members who, I think partially joking, but also expressing, oh my gosh, that's so pretty. That is
a Mandarin rat snake.
Yep, that's the one I was talking about. That's not the mangrove, but is like an inverse of the mangrove.
Yep, indeed.
Very pretty.
On camera.
And it's kind of pink. I don't know. Is that the right color? Is it pink?
It is a little pinkish. So some of them are just high yellow everywhere, and this particular morph has pink outside of it, and you can see it's just high yellow within the diamonds.
Yeah. Anyway, to keep answering your question, Matt, there were family members that were concerned that
Szechuan locale.
Szechuan, the little baby snake I got was going to grow up and kill Arden, And there's not a ball python on the planet that could kill any human being. There are other snakes that are bigger that could, but no ball python has ever or will ever kill a human being unless, I suppose, if you were asleep and you slept with your mouth open and it crawled in through your mouth and suffocated you from the inside by blocking your airway, I suppose that could happen. But I think they get a bad rap because, first of all, they're creepy crawly. They hide, they slither around, they look different. They don't move the way other things do. They don't have legs and yet they get around. They look like they might be slimy or gross. And so it's just the general aversion. And then people ramp that up with stories, including the religious stories where they get the blame. That's my best guess. I can't pretend to know.
It's all connected to ignorance because people think that these things are slimy.
Yeah, that bugs me.
Their keratinized scales do have a sheen to it, but having a high wax finish does not mean mucus.
Yeah, and my car isn't slimy when I wax it.
My son's science teacher, one of his middle school science teachers, told me that snakes were invertebrates because they didn't have backbones.
They're like all backbone. How sad is that?
Exactly.
Anyway, I hope that gives you a little insight, Matt, but we're going to have to say we don't know, but that's what we suspect.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the time.
Yep, thanks for waiting. Cheers.
My wife wanted to throw out that the high yellow ones that are all high yellow without the pink, those are the Vietnamese, man.
Vietnamese.
Instead of the Szechuan, they use the Vietnamese rat snakes. Okay, yeah.
I think I prefer Szechuan to Vietnamese, but I might be talking about food at this point. All right. Our final call of the day. Thanks so much for your patience. Chris, EM from Phoenix. How you holding up, Chris? You having a good day?
Doing good. How about you?
I'm doing great. I get to talk about one of my other favorite subjects with one of my other favorite people.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I don't like snakes too much, but that's probably because I woke up one morning with it was probably a 4-foot garden snake in my bed. Was not very excited about that. May have been a bull snake. I'm not sure. And then another time we were digging a trench, and my dad was like, "Hey, just dig out that little bit of dirt right there." And as I was digging, there was I guess it was a corn snake. It wasn't one of the poisonous ones, but it was black, red, yellow. And just scared me, right? So I don't necessarily have a liking for them. I'm not like phobia, but
it's probably a milk snake. Some of the milk snakes have the coloration that is similar to corals. By the way, if you're all those tired old adages that people used to say, red and yellow, kill a fellow, yellow, red and black, friend of Jack. I hope people understand that those are rough guidelines of the most common varieties, and they are not a safety thing. If you don't know what it is, leave it the fuck alone.
Right. That's a good call. That's a good advice. So I have a question for you, and then a compliment for both of you. The first question is I guess it's been only about a year now since left the church. I was a hard Reformed Calvinist for many years. Before that, I was raised Church of Christ, and so a nice plethora of craziness. But since I became an atheist, I had an extreme, just almost hatred. Every time I passed a church, I was just so angry, just by seeing a church. And you get concerned. I haven't actually came out to any of my family, not that I'm terribly close to them, but when they're still very, very dedicated, I guess, or so there's a concern of how they're going to react when it does come out.
Well, fortunately, you said you're not very close.
Right.
My family, maybe they were just looking for an excuse to drop all communication with me, and I provided it by not being an atheist. By being an atheist, by not worshiping their God, and then it was especially bad. I lost the last communication with anybody in my family when I didn't worship the orange god.
Yeah, that was one of the big kickers, to see how vitriol Christians were because of that man. it made me sick. And then that just made me actually look deeper, which was interesting because I think there was always a seed in me. I used to listen to Christopher Hitchens all the time, which Matt, I heard you talking about him the other day. And I think he was probably one of the best debaters I had ever listened to. Most debaters on both sides, they have this like script, right? And they keep that script. But Hitchens would actually listen to whoever his opponent was and create arguments for that opponent. And I just thought that was the most amazing thing for a debater, even as a believer. And so after I became a believer, I went through every single book I could read by Hitchens. And he's an amazing writer. I don't believe in everything he wrote about, but just really good stuff.
There was something about Hitchens' voice and accent, just the way that he spoke. I mean, I have huge respect for Matt here as a debater, but I've been in the room with Hitchens during a debate, and I was just so impressed that when they put Bill Dembski up against Christopher Hitchens, and I all I could think of was, really, Dembski against Hitch?
Yeah, that'd be very wild.
I thought one of his best series,
as it sounds.
I think one of his best series was Doug Wilson when he went to all the universities, and then they actually did a movie. I thought that was a great series.
How does you mentioned your anger? How would you describe your anger? Is it more of a frustration, or is it, are you approaching rage? And have you seen it wane at all in the last year as changes happen?
Definitely seen it wane. I don't get as angry, and it's more of like I was deceived for so many years, and almost maybe it's probably more of mad at myself, and it's reflected towards that organization because I consider myself a fairly intelligent person, and that I was deceived for so long.
Yeah. As long as your rage is against the institution and not the people therein. Because one important thing to bear in mind is that most of the prominent atheists that I know and that are now my friends were believers, ardent believers at one point. And so you have to bear in mind that when you're talking to somebody, it's not, first of all, people are not impervious to reason. And I get messages, I want to say about an average of once a day, maybe like 7 days a week in different types of message forums. I get communication for about the last 10 years or so from former believers telling me that, or thanking me that for something I said somewhere that started them on the road that walked them out of their delusion, and so they send messages of appreciation for that. So now they're atheists, or now they're taking classes in biology or whatever, and they've changed their major and they're sending messages to me to say that some video that I did or speech that I gave that changed their mind. That's hugely moving. So we know that people do come from these fundamentalist positions, yourself as an example. And so the next person that you're talking to, if they're an apologist, you understand that there was a time when we all kind of made those same kind of arguments. And there was something that reached you. There was something that reached the rest of us that changed our mind. And you just and sadly, it's something different for a lot of people.
I think one of the
100%.
nice things is to recognize that a lot of people go through this and that it does get easier. As the distance from the way you used to think increases, the anger, like many other things, can change to pity. As long as you try to hang on to your empathy for the people and reserve, as Aron was saying, reserve that anger for the institutions, I think you're going to be fine. And don't beat yourself up too much for feeling frustrated at the fact that you were clearly duped for years, and now you are coming to terms with living in a world that is different from the world you thought it was for all of those years. And it's not an easy thing to deal with, but I think you're going to be fine.
Thanks, I appreciate that. I do want to mention, though, I've seen like several videos that you guys talked about where people feel more free, right? So I don't suffer from anxiety or depression, but my wife and kids do. And since my wife and youngest have left also, they are not as depressed. They're not as anxious. They're a lot more happy. They don't feel like there's this weight on them of some sort of guidelines or something that they have to keep. And it's just been astronomical, and just so happy to see them in a much better place.
Also, somebody in chat, Perch Dragon, just wanted me to remind you that the American Atheist Convention is coming to Phoenix in 2023. That'll be Easter, essentially. So since that's where you're at, that's a good opportunity to hang out and interact with myself and probably Aron, I suspect, and a bunch of other people as well.
I may have to come back for that because we're actually moving a week from Friday to Omaha, Nebraska.
Oh, no. Lord. Well, it's worth the trip, and you probably will have friends and family in the area to interact with anyway. But I just want to make sure
you a slight difference in the climate.
What?
You might notice a slight difference in the climate, especially around November.
Time in Omaha right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
It's a little bit different. Hey, I appreciate you guys so much. Aron, your trip to Idaho, to the Capitol, was amazing. I do appreciate all you guys, what you guys do and all the work you guys do. So keep it up.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I also, and not just because she requested it, I have to say hello. Hi, Shannon. I see you. I hope you had a good Christmas and a Happy New Year. What we need is to get you on the hang up along with other people. I've got Aron on. I've had all my other friends on. We need to get... I know Shannon's busy with a lot of stuff, and Shannon's working along with other people on the line on Skeptalk and other shows here. It's amazing what we're doing with the network and everything else, but we have to get Shannon back on here at some point when you have time, so we can get brain stuff that that makes me think. It was so fun doing the 6-hour Christmas stream. We're going to be doing a New Year's stream as well. And, you're seeing all of the people involved in the line, just absolutely amazing. I'm so happy to be here with Jimmy and Aron and Forrest and Shannon and, all of those people on Transatlantic, like Arden and Katy and Ben. And I'm going to forget all the names. And then there's, Jimmy's going to give me a list here in just a second of upcoming shows, which I know the big thing is the massive New Year's Eve super party thing that we're going to be doing on New Year's Eve. New Year's Godless Eve with Dick Clark. We should be like Click Dark or something like that. So that'll be this Saturday. We'll be doing that. And next week on Hang Up, I've got Dave Warnock coming. But we're going to move on to, it's Arden and Ben tomorrow on the Transatlantic Call-In Show. We're going to move on to our super chat portion of the call. And Jimmy and I will be doing Sunday. So that's a current schedule. Tomorrow on the Transatlantic Call-In Show, Arden and Ben. Saturday will be the 6-hour or however many hour plus New Year's Godless Eve thing we're doing. And then on Sunday, Jimmy and I will be doing the Sunday show. But tonight we have to do our super chats, and we get to do 1999 from Greg Murkowski. Aron, what distinguishes snakes from legless lizards? Which was on Earth first? Thanks for the show, Matt. Thanks for the network, Jimmy. So, Aron, yes, they're just going to put you on the spot and have you teach us all. How are snakes distinct from legless lizards, and which was on Earth first?
Well, whether lizards were legless before snakes were. Snakes are a subset of lizards, of course. They may have been the first legless lizards, but there are a number of other lizard groups that were seemingly headed that way, especially the burrowing varieties. One of the distinctions that you get with snakes is that they don't have the external ear at all. They don't have the ear hole. They don't have the plate that other lizards have. They have only their inner ear, and they hear most things through low resonant vibrations through their jaws. They also don't have eyelids. Their eyes are forever open, covered by a protective scale that sheds with the rest of their skin. And this again would also help with burrowing. And I'm trying to think about what other thing applies to all snakes collectively that differs from lizards, and there's very, very subtle distinctions in the skull and so forth. But I think those are the only traits of note that we could probably talk about. There are some other legless lizards that move the same way that snakes do, that have figured out how to move their ribs and their scales or the muscles in their skin to make the same kind of motion that snakes do. So that's not unique. But the fact that their eyes are always open and that they don't have ears, that's a unique distinction.
You got to keep those eyes open. Good looking out. Thanks, Greg. Great questions. I don't have any legless lizards other than the snakes, but the specifically legless lizards that are distinct, I don't have any of. I will say there's a lot of species of snakes that I don't recommend anybody get as a pet, and not just the large ones. Things like sunbeam snakes, which are absolutely glorious, are just entirely too difficult to keep. They are nocturnal, burrowing. They are the most beautiful iridescent snakes you're ever going to see. But the keeping requirements, those are expert level. Like, I know what I'm doing. And if somebody said, hey, I'd like to give you a sunbeam snake, I'd say, no, let's find a zoo or someone who can actually do that one right.
Similarly, at that one convention in Austin that had the gaboon vipers and the mamba and all that, there was somebody there was selling a elephant trunk snake.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, and I'm like, why?
let me get a big vat of water.
Yeah, this should come with a manual.
Yeah, there are a lot of things to consider. 1999 from Lori W. I have ball pythons and I love them. My advice to anyone breeding would be to pick a morph you're passionate about and focus on that one or two. I'll be watching for an axanthic baby from you. Lori, I don't currently have any. I don't even have any that are het axanthic. We have lavender albinos and het lavenders. We have piebalds and het piebalds because we're going to be breeding dreamsicles, which is a lavender albino piebald. And the only other recessive that I have is caramel albino, which we're not breeding for right now. But Arden loves axanthics, in particular, I think the VPI and TSK varieties. And I suspect that in year 2 of our ball python breeding, that axanthic and desert ghost style stuff will start to show up along with clown. Arden, you want to read the next one?
All right, $9.99 from Keith X. I love snakes. My question is, in captivity, how do you allow them to stretch their legs, if you will? Well, that's a bit of because snakes can get out of hand very quickly, and they can get into places you wouldn't think that they could, especially when they're babies. Babies can get through anything that water can get through. So I built this cabinet, and I set one of these baby snakes in it, and I thought it was all finished. I thought it was all seamed up and real nice, but it found a little teeny tiny crack I didn't think it could fit through, and went right through it. So they're basically liquid when they're babies. So there's a problem when you let them out and you want to let them run around. If you take them outside, and I've seen other people do this, where they take their snakes out and they'll take them out to the park or something, they'll put them in the grass. Well, then one of the things that you have to be concerned about is if there's places where there are other snakes out there, then you might be running into a risk of parasites. And if you have a bunch of snakes, you definitely don't want to run a risk of parasites.
Yeah, let me tell you about that firsthand. As we dealt with snake mites over the last month, we are, I think, finally clear or completely clear. It was, on our channel, we will talk about the ordeal to rid our collection of mites just for one little bit that got through quarantine. What we do, which I mentioned earlier, I realized this came in before that. Our breeding snakes primarily live in a rack system, but they don't spend all their time there. We have a collapsible playpen, and we'll probably get more than one of them that we can put into a room with a appropriate basking lamp. And I've got some branches and other things that are already sterile that we can put in there, and the snakes can explore. They can climb if they want to. They can burrow if they want to. All of this, and get UVB as well, stretch their legs all on their own, where they're not actually just being handled. And we run our snakes, or we'll be running all of our snakes. We're still setting up the second enclosure through that on a regular basis. And we try, I mean, you can get to a point where you have too many to handle. Most of the big breeders that are doing everything in racks, one of the things that I think Arden and I are both wanting to do is try to show that there are subtle, slight improvements you can make that will vastly improve the health and potential mental health of your snake, including providing opportunities for enrichment, not just in like the playpen, but in their enclosure as well. We go to the dollar store. I bought some, you know, I've thrown plastic spoons, little rubber duckies, fake, that stuff. Just put it right in there with them. And then, because I have a rack of 40 and another rack of 10, move them from one enclosure to another so that they're getting something new. Every time we go through and clean everything, we move the enrichment things around to different places.
Yeah, so the building a playpen is a good idea. What Matt's talking about, I'm going to be doing that same thing. I want to build a playpen that sits on our table that has a short wall with a inward wall, so that's a little bit harder for them to go over, where they have to go backward a little bit before they go over, because it can be so fast. Yeah. If you're not really, really attentive, you'd be amazed how fast a snake can disappear on you. I was holding my baby Russian rat. I was holding it in my hand, and it started to go up into my sleeve. So I thought it went into the sleeve of my shirt. When I start feeling, I can't feel it, because what had happened was I'm watching the tail disappear to the sleeve this way. The head was actually coming out the other way.
Right.
And I'm sitting at the table not realizing that it's on my keyboard table now. So now it's under my desk, and I'm freaking out. How the hell did it go into my shirt and just disappear? Because it played it did a switchback on me. And somebody else in the room, a little bit smarter than me, knew to pull out the drawer for the keyboard. There it is. So you have to be very, very attentive, especially with the babies, as I said. So you want to make something that they can't get out of quickly, and then you still have to keep an eye on them, aware that you're just slowing down their escape, because they do want to explore. I saw a video yesterday of what I think is a milk snake. It looked an awful lot like my gray-banded king snake, but the head was a little different. And it was weaving its way through a bicycle tire as the bicycle is hanging from the wall, and the snake's weight is turning the tire as it goes. So it's got a little treadmill.
Oh, that's so cool. That is so cool.
So they do use toys like this, like Matt was saying. And there's a number of things we have. I went out and I cut down trees and then covered them, cut down branches from trees, measured them for the enclosures, and put shellac on them so they don't have any risk of parasites or any of that. And then I put on mounts so that my snakes have a something that they can climb on inside their enclosure, because some of our snakes are semi-arboreal, and so they do need some time to get out and not just to be in your hands, but to be, get out and actually, like when my wife bought a sock that's open on both ends, the snakes like to crawl through the sock. It's a simple toy. It's just a tube of material, but they enjoy going through and doing that. And there's a number of other structures. Your local reptarium will be able to advise you on different snake toys.
So we're definitely running long. I want to make sure we get through all these super chats. So we'll get through some of these. Some of these questions are going to be answered on the actual snake content channel as we produce more content. And we'll talk about it at other times too. But $10 from Pondlets. I came for the snacks. Also love you guys. Thank you so much, Pondlets. I would prefer the snacks to a lot of the people I know as well.
Mm-hmm. And then $10 from Puppy Cloud. I have a very old bearded dragon, Pagonus viticeps. I'm hoping that he lives long enough to get his breath weapon and a few spell lots.
That's outstanding.
Yeah, and Puppy Cloud, I love your logo there.
Yes. $10 from Nightly Logic. Hey, Matt and Aron Ra, huge fan of you both. Matt, I think the debate last night was good. Thank you. It appeared to me that you made William uncomfortable by challenging his beliefs. In my opinion, that was progress. I will say, as I did earlier, we spoke afterwards. We may be doing this again. We are both seemingly interested in finding a way to have cross-examination that does not become absolute yelling, ridiculous, shut up, answer my question, blah, blah, that type of stuff, which I did and he did. And, but also for the people who were concerned that he tossed out the R slur and doubled down and tripled down, after it was over, he looked it up and has gained a new understanding of the problem with that word, which I don't know how anybody gets to 2022 without realizing it. but he acknowledged it, apologized properly, and said that he intends to unscrub that from his vocabulary. So something really good came out of last night, even if it wasn't related to Mariology. But thank you, Knightley.
$10 from Charred Faith. I'm here on behalf of the rats.
There you go. I when we started breeding him, it was just a cost-efficient maneuver. I love those things. I've talked more about the process. We're not just breeding food; we are also breeding for pets. It'll still be food. That's the harshness of a world. Snakes got to eat, and the snakes that we keep eat rodents.
And there's an interesting natural selection thing going on, because if you have one if you have the hooded rats, if they're just common hooded, then their chances are that they're going to be food. But if it's one of those rare blonde ones, or if it has an unusual pattern, or if it just makes it adorably cute, then there's a higher likelihood that one's going to be saved to be a pet. And likewise, if you have one of the curly-haired rats, well, now you've got some, and the Dumbos and so forth. Well, now you're the special morph, aren't you? You're not just
got them all.
One. This is how the natural selection works, even when we're not naturally selecting.
Yeah. I have Dumbos, I have Rexes, I have Hoodeds, I have all different colors. I have 3 colonies of hairless breeding right now. It's amazing. If you'd have told me that breeding rats for snakes was going to turn me into somebody who actually knows a lot about rat genetics and rat breeding, which is different a little bit from the snakes, I'd have been like, nah, I just want to breed the food, get out of here. And then it's like, nah, let's also breed some pets. And Arden, every time she walks out there, if there's baby rats, I want to say, Arden's like, ooh, look at all the cute babies. But I do that shit too. We're both just absolutely stupid.
What amazes me, Matt, is that there's some people who use their garage to put cars in.
Yeah. How would you do that? I got a friend's motorcycle. I've got a Coca-Cola machine that I'm turning into an incubator, a table saw, and a bunch of rats.
I got a wood shop. I don't put my car in there anymore.
So $10 from 9 of 7. This has made me so happy. Thank you both. I appreciate it.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much. I love bonus shows. $10 Canadian from Girl with the Cane. Matt and Aron, thanks for showing us the snakes and teaching us about them. Great show. Oh, thank you so much.
$10 from Zacchus. I'm a software engineer and fell in love with your systematic classification of life series and am loving the Ophidia spinoff. Cladistics flows so well with OOP languages. OOP?
Object-oriented programming.
Okay, gotcha.
Our worlds have collided. Software developer, cladistic construction, boom. $10 from Diane Upshaw. Hey, had a fascinating conversation with a Baptist preacher in the beer aisle in the grocery store tonight. He was frustrated at the stigma in his church in regard to drinking. I wanted to say so much. It's one of my favorite jokes that Catholics don't recognize that Protestants are Christians, and Baptists don't recognize each other in the liquor store.
2 Mormons get amnesia in Starbucks.
Yes.
$10 from Curtis. Are there reptile, specifically snake breeders, that are breeding for temperament morphs instead of aesthetics? Well, we do know that the Russian rat snake and the Sanderson, Texas gray-banded king both have that reputation of being very easily handleable, and more so than like popular pet snakes like the hognose. You know, hognose can be pretty aggressive. The hognose can and sometimes do bite you and venomate you and all of that. Where it's rare that you get aggressive attacks from, a Russian rat snake, for example.
One of the things is that the ones that are there's a reason why ball pythons are the most common pet snake. And it's not just because they have tons of morphs, although that's a big part of it. The others is their temperament. Have I been bitten by a ball python? Sure. Am I going to get bitten by another one? Absolutely. Because we're going to have babies and babies bite, but it don't hurt. And it's just instinctive. And most of the time it's a food response and not aggression. Snakes aren't aggressive. They're not going to chase you. So what the breeders are doing is, in a way, they're breeding for temperament. In in the sense that the snakes that eat well, that are easily handled, that survive and thrive well in captivity and can breed, are also going to be the ones that have the best temperament. You saw corn snakes, rainbow boa, African house snakes, and ball pythons, all right here on mine. And Aron also had bull snake, king snake, Asian rat snakes, mandarin rat.
Yep.
And
Mandarin rat, Russian
neither
rat.
one of us got bit. But if either of us had gotten bit, it would have been, oh, look, he bit me. It's so funny to me that people are like, aren't you worried about them biting you? I have 2 cats downstairs. I'm more worried about them biting me. And nobody ever asks me that. Now, my cats probably won't, but they can, and they have, and sometimes they do it nibbling for fun. And the rats, I haven't been bitten by the rats, despite the fact that rats have incisors that never stop growing, and they use their mouth as a 5th hand, and they will nibble at you. They're not trying to bite you. They're kind of taste testing you. Can they bite you? You bet. You piss off a rat enough, it could take a chunk out of you. And some of those rats are evil little fuckers that are cannibalistic and eat the babies of the other rats, which is why I built a maternity rack. I'm not worried about my snakes biting me or anybody else almost ever.
I've bitten Matt more than the snakes.
I tried to bring out our Cali King, but which normally she does the same thing that this corn snake is doing. They keep crawling up against the glass. They want to be let out. They want to be taken out. And the Cali King very often does that, but wasn't wanting to come out. I think she's going into shed, I think is her deal. But
I need to show you when we're done this king snake I want.
When I first bought her, when I first came home with this Cali King, and I actually got on camera. I was doing some kind of podcast, and I had her in my hand, and she bit my finger, and I had to be looking at her to know that she was biting my finger because I literally couldn't feel it.
Yep. Is it me or you?
I don't know. I'll read it. $9.99 from Sunny Joe. Do either of you have any plans for future reptile-related YouTube content? Also, do you have any favorite reptile channels?
Yes and yes.
I don't know if I have a favorite. I watch a few, and I just watch them all kind of equally. I do like Clint's Reptiles. I guess I'll put that down as my favorites. And I do intend on doing more content about snakes and such, but I don't know if I'm going to be putting it on my main channel or not. So it's hard for me to decide.
Arden and I have set up a new channel for Epic Loot Exotics. It should be in the links that I Got Cookies has wonderfully been spamming throughout this show. We'll have new content up there starting in early January with some shorts. Some of it will be educational content. Some of it will be about our breeding process and other stuff like that, the various morphs we're looking as we build up to our first clutches that will be this spring and summer. As far as favorite channels, yes, I love Clint's Reptiles. I also tend to watch Snake Discovery. I've been watching Brian Barczyk for years. I watch a bit of stuff from Wiccan's Wicked Reptiles and Adam Warlock, Dave Kaufman. I don't know why I said Adam Warlock. That's wild. A number of other channels like that. There are some really good and educational channels there that have taught me about new species and taught me things I didn't know about other species. Because while I've had an interest in snakes for as long as I can remember, I'm not a zoologist. I'm not a herpetologist. I'm just somebody who passionately loves these things and has for years and is trying to turn a hobby maybe into a business. Maybe we'll be profitable in like 4 or 5 years. Those are great.
We were talking about being bit. I was bitten by a ball python once, my daughter's ball python, and it was my own stupidity. It was my own fault because I wasn't using tongs.
Yep.
I would foolishly dangled a mouse into the enclosure, and the snake missed. And the snake was freaked out about it. So she bit me. I'm bleeding from my finger just a little bit, and the snake freaked out so much that it wouldn't eat for another 2 weeks.
Yep. If you get bit by a snake, it is your fault. You did something wrong. You either handled it when it didn't want to be handled, you handled it wrong, you confused it about what its food was. At some point, you did something wrong, because you can always just leave them alone.
Well, there's the assumption that you knew it was there, because there is this old adage: if it was
Fair.
a snake,
I suppose, but then you tread into its area carelessly without looking around. But I just sent you a link on Messenger of the Hypo Florida king snake that I desperately want, just so you can see it. It's just beautiful colors. I'll get this one. Holy moly, $100 from Stevo66. I can't thank you enough. Really enjoyed seeing those gorgeous snakes. Unfortunately, they're one of my 2 irrational fears, the other being clowns. Oh no, there's a clown variety of ball pythons, and Aron has one. Never seen you guys so happy. Life's about finding and engaging your passions. Regards. That's because you don't see me when it's just me and Arden sitting down in the living room making each other laugh. Then I'm genuinely happier. But I appreciate the fact that people get to see me happy.
I'm sorry that I keep cutting you off. I keep thinking that
you're fine.
I'm sorry, but I'm looking at the picture of the king snake that you just sent me, and that is gorgeous.
Yeah,
and
that was cheap.
Unexpected.
And cheap. Like,
no.
I'd order it already, but I'm going to hold off a little bit. All right.
$10 from James Call. Love you and respect both of you guys. Your work has been so important. Thank you so much.
Thanks, James. $9.99 from Amanda W. Hey, Aron and Matt, do either of you know anything about the purpose of the oil lipid in the blue phase of the shedding process of snakes? Does it help build the new scales?
I have to confess, I don't really know. I was confused about why their eyes go blue days before. I mean, they unblue again days before the skin comes off, and I've never known why that is.
Well, usually that's because the eye caps come off before the rest of the shed comes off. But the lipid in the blue phase, I could be wrong. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't know any more about this than Aron does probably. I thought that it was just a secretion that helps shed that layer of skin. That's what I thought the purpose was for, but I don't know if it helps in building up new scales or not. I should look into that. Thanks for the new avenue of research, Amanda, and for the donation. Both are welcome.
$50 from Lita Zad. Thank you.
Well, that's nice. Yes, that's incredibly generous and very welcome. $14.99 Australian from Hank says, as Aussie kids, I'm not going to do that. As Aussie kids, we're dropped off in the bush and not allowed home unless we can capture and tame an inland taipan or king brown snake. Hashtag facts. Hashtag bullshit. Hashtag bullshit. You guys would be nearly extinct now if that's what was happening. I will say that by and large, while I generally list ball pythons as my favorites because that's what I breed, and I think that San Francisco garter snake is probably the prettiest snake I've ever seen. Overall, I have owned and appreciated Australian snakes more than any other. I've had carpet pythons. I've had a lot of Antaresia, maculosa, childreni. I want on my wish list black-headed. There's only 2 species in Aspidaites. They're both Australian, and that's Aspidaites ramsii and Aspidaites woma. And so woma and black-headed snakes look pretty much the same, except that woma just has like a robin mask, and the black-headed has like the whole Batman hood. So I just look at those 2 as the Batman and Robin of Australian snakes. But I love
when we were in Australia, I remember you and I were walking through a wildlife park of some sort.
Yes.
I think it was in Perth.
It was Australia Zoo in Brisbane.
Okay. And we had the information that there is either pythons or it's venomous. So there's a hell of a lot of lapids in Australia, and everything is incredibly deadly. If it's not a python, then it's incredibly deadly. And there was a snake that was definitely not a python that fell from a tree between me and Matt as Matt was coming up the sidewalk. And I remember looking at him, looking at me like, well, now what am I going to do?
Yes. And that was after everybody was teasing us about drop bears as if they were a real thing, but a snake legitimately fell out of the canopy onto the walkway right there at Australia Zoo.
$20 from Chris White. Thanks for taking my call. I do not have atheist friends, so having that bit of encouragement was really uplifting. You should get some atheist friends.
Some of them are going to be shitty, but most of them are going to be awesome. $10 from Jeff Edwards. Thank you, Jeff. Second only to when they talk about their significant others. Arn and Matt are crazy happy. Take that, Christians. They're getting more joy from snakes than you get from faith. That's a fact. Hashtag facts right there. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Jeff. There are some things that I genuinely just fill me with joy. Arden being one of them, obviously. And the snakes and studying and learning new things and having a passion for stuff. That's way up there. Making people think and watching people think, that's way up there.
There's a wonderful Onion skit about, this could have happened to anybody with a 20-foot python, where a family is complaining that they left their child in the enclosure with the snake because their child and their snake both live in the enclosure, and the 20-foot python eventually ate the child. And the husband in this skit says the line that Matt just reminded me of, says, "You never expect a python to bring you anything but joy."
Only two more, unless people want to extend this show out longer.
All right, I know we've run long. We're doing 2 more super chats to finish this off. If you want to get your last words in, this is your last chance to put super chats in. $20 for Pocket
Snakes. Of course, it runs long.
Yes. This show has no legs. Actually, I had rats, so it does. $20 from Pocket Watch 625. On the topic of snakes, my favorite videos of you two are your encounter with Matt Slick from Carm. They keep me angry, and that makes me feel alive. Thank you for educating and entertaining me in my post-conversion life. Matt and I actually have gotten along every time we talk. We vehemently disagree. And there are some things, though, that we have in common, including both of us like tequila. And Matt was supposed to come down to Austin for a wedding. And while he was here, he was going to stop by the house. We were going to do shots of tequila and just chit chat on the couch to see, pick a subject and let's see if we can get somewhere on it. Unfortunately, I think his schedule didn't allow for it. But yeah, it's not like we're friends or anything, but I've genuinely enjoyed some parts of my conversation with Matt.
$10 from Hillary D. Hey, Matt, are you going to do a follow-up on the debate you did 8 days ago?
Yes. Tomorrow and Friday, I will be recording debate reviews of my debate with Nadir and my debate with William. I don't know if I'm going to do a debate review of the one I did with Kenny at DebateCon 2. I may turn the one into Nadir, the one about Nadir, into both of them. Just do it like a robust debate, because I did 2 back-to-back debates on Is Islam True with 2 different Muslims, and it might be a different type of debate review to contrast those of what was said and how things went. Yeah, because Nadir is not in touch with reality, and Kenny's probably not far removed, but was kinder. $10 Canadian, that's not even real money, from Shannon Q, that says, last word. I love you to pieces. I love the fact that you have a chainsaw and used it on your Christmas tree after it was over. That's as much as I'd love to give you the last word, somebody else has decided to chime in, and somebody else has decided to chime in after that. So
$10 from Chris White, the last word.
And $9.99 from Amanda W. If you find any papers on the blue phase, I'd love to see a video on it and share the papers. I'm interested in it for potential biomimicry purposes. I keep notes for myself in keep.google.com. I created a new pinned note in Keep for me to go research the lipid oil and what it's for, and to learn more about snake shedding. And I will do what I can to report back. That ends the super chat. You guys are amazing. Huge thank you, by the way, to all of our moderators there, especially Cookies, who was spamming our social media stuff for Epic Loot Exotics. And a huge thank you to Jimmy for producing this, and for Aron for being willing to come on here, share his collection, talk about something that we genuinely love that isn't just sitting here arguing about religion all day.
And quail coffee.
I couldn't have asked for a better bonus show, except for Jimmy to interrupt me right at the end. So what is it, Jimmy?
Oh, I'm sorry, Matt, but you also need to thank the screener, Quail Coffee. I just wanted to make sure that wasn't missed.
If you'd have given me a minute, I was going to thank the screener as well.
No, you weren't. Don't you fuck with me.
I literally have a list here that reminds me to thank the screener and the mods and Jimmy. I do want to thank Jimmy. It's so fun because somebody in chat was like, I like when Matt gets mad at Jimmy. And so I was like, all right, I'll do that again the very next time. Because it's like, oh, wait, I got interrupted. As if I haven't interrupted people 50 million fucking times. Half the reason that I get upset about stuff is because I know I do it. And we're all trying to get better. Running shows like this is incredibly difficult. And anybody who thinks that any of the three of us or any of the people who are here on this network are actually sitting around getting legitimately mad at people in any serious way, you don't have a clue. And you don't have a clue about how happy all of us are to, first of all, be here, have the audience, have the wonderful support of moderators, call screeners, Jimmy producing, having a pool of guests to select from, and people who are generous with their time and their donations. Thanks for hanging with us for 2 hours and 18 minutes tonight. Come back and watch Transatlantic Call-In Show tomorrow with student Dr. Ben and Arden. And this weekend, New Year's Eve rockin' Godless Party. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.